Namaskar. I just made a video on group discussion which received good feedback. So I thought let me continue this exercise and come up with a video on how to face the job related interviews or job interviews. Now, the job related interview or job interview, to crack it, one must work at three levels. There are three phases at which you must work strategically if you want to crack a job interview. Number one is before the interview, what preparations are required to be made, what strategies are required to be made, what readings you have to basically do, etc. During the interview, body language, how to handle the queries, how to handle the difficult questions, stress related questions, situational questions, behavioral questions. There are many types of questions, some tricky situations, okay, some do's and don'ts. And the third part is surprisingly is post interview. There are things that you may do also post interview which may also help you in creating a good impression in long run. So let's begin. Before interview, what you should be doing is number one, you should read the job description of the job very perfectly or precisely, because if you don't know the job that you are applying for, if you don't understand the duties and responsibilities involved in that job, reporting relationships in that job, the skills competencies required in that job, key result areas KRS in that job, then probably you are not ready to be interviewed for that job. So number one thing that you need to do is you need to understand the whole job, its compensation part, its pros and cons, skills required, timings, location, competencies, expected behaviors, everything. So study the job description, job specification that has been provided by the company. Number two, you must also study the website of the company, not surf it, not surf the website. You must study each and every hook and corner of the website, starting from about us to CSR projects, products, services, every information, mission, objectives, whatever is available. The, for example, the what we can say is introduction of the founders of the company, or list of clients, or anything that you believe is important. Please read it and read it thoroughly. That will help you understand the company's business model, or at least it will give you some idea about the vision of the company, mission of the company, what it wants, what it stands for, etc. Third thing is you are going to basically sell yourself. You are basically trying to sell yourself in the interview. So prepare your own CV properly, in the sense that read your own CV. Once your CV is ready, read every hook and corner of your own CV and prepare yourself to answer any questions that may come from your own CV, because sometimes the interviewer simply asks questions from your curriculum vitae, and it has been observed that many students or many people or candidates are not able to give proper answer. So make sure that you understand everything that you have mentioned in your CV and are able to justify that. Whatever claims that you have made, whatever details you have shared, whatever content that you have shared in your CV must be justifiable with proper reasoning by you. After that, now you are ready to basically appear for the job. Once the interview begins, so once you are at the place, please keep in mind, I mean, before the interview begins, reach that particular premises at least 15 minutes in advance, and make sure that you are basically conversant, or you are comfortable in that environment, you know that place well, the office premises, the ambience, the culture, atmosphere. I mean, if you reach at the last moment by running down very quickly, you may perspire. If you reach late for the interview, it may lead to a poor impression formation. So there are many reasons why you should reach on time. If you are coming from outside the city where the interview is going to be conducted, make sure you plan your travel properly and reach as advanced as possible. Second thing is, don't reach too early. So for example, if the interview time is 11:30 a.m. and you are outside the office at 10:30 a.m., please don't enter the office that much early. Enter the office only around 11:05, 11:10, because if you basically reach too early, it has also been observed that many employers take it negatively. Although such things are relatively rare, but it's not worth taking a chance. So make sure that you reach within that office premises only before 15-20 minutes of the interview, not too early, not too late. Once you once you enter the conference room or the room where the interview is or has been scheduled, keep one thing in mind, that of course knock the door, may I come in, all these things are, I'm sure, known to you. And once you go inside, if you are not asked to sit, don't sit. If the interviewers are chatting or are not able to pay attention to you, and if they have not asked you to sit down, it is generally not a good idea to take a seat. You may ask, may I sit, may I take a seat, and obviously they will say yes. So these are the smaller things that you should be careful about. Grooming is very important, so we can do a whole video on the grooming. But proper formal clothes, well combed hair, proper shaving in case of males. In case of females, once again the same things, I mean clothes etc should be proper, uh, formal. The choice of the color of the clothes etc, everything matters. We can do a video about it. But in short, make sure that you represent yourself in a professional attire and your grooming is proper. Don't wear very strong perfume, because it has also been noted that some people are allergic, they have allergy of very strong perfume. So if your interviewer is not someone who likes very strong perfume, it may go against you. So if you want to wear a perfume, make sure that it is lighter, it is generally on a not too stronger side, fine. So all these things said and done, also keep one more thing in mind, that always keep minimum 3 to 4 copies of your CV with you. In case there are more people in the panel, you can always hand over extra copies to them, and one should be kept for yourself. So always go with me, according to me, you should go with 5-6 copies. A lot of people spend a lot of money on getting the photocopies of the CVs which are color. I don't think it really makes too much sense. I mean, color CV will not really fetch you a job. The content inside is important, so no need to spend extra money on the color of the CV. All right, now the interview, obviously the interview begins. The research has proven, I mean, in the book of HRM by Gary Disler, in the 7th chapter, he clearly mentions that it has been proven, there is enough empirical evidence to prove that most of the interviewers judge the candidate or interviewee within first 2 minutes. So first impression is very important. How you answer the first question, how you enter the premises, how you carry yourself, your grooming, these things are very important. If you fumble in those first 5 minutes, then it may really lead to a very bad first impression, and it may not be easy to make a comeback after that. So make sure that first impression is very, very important, and you create the right first impression. So the answer to the question, introduce yourself, should be well prepared by you. No need to mug up. Always use your own expression, but the content should be clear. And always introduce yourself, uh, not your father, not your grandfather. For example, your father is an IAS officer, or grandfather is a judge in the court, or is a big businessman, or one of your relatives is at some very good post. Sometimes what happens, you may get carried away introducing them, but the fact is the company is only interested in your own candidature and not what your relatives are. So if it adds value to your candidature, that may be fine, but otherwise that should be avoided. For example, if your father has a transferable job, sorry, your father had a transferable job throughout life, and you have been to a lot of places because of that, because every time the father or mother is transferred, you would have to leave one city, go to other city, study in separate schools, separate colleges, and made new friends. So in that case, if there is an interview for the sales job, then this particular experience of yours of getting transferred to different places and adjusting to the different places, different schools, comes handy, because in sales a lot of travel is required. A lot of flexibility is required in the person. So if any of those details of your family background makes your candidature stronger, makes your the interviewer feels like, or maybe perceived that, or maybe convinced that, basically, that certain of your details, personal details, adds more weightage to your candidature, then you may add. But otherwise, it is not a very good idea to really go for long stories about introducing yourself. Keep it short and simple. Your name, your qualification, if any experience, within that experience, what were the duties of the job, responsibilities, and anything special achievements that you have made, any other special certificate you have, any special skill you have that may add value to the job that for which you are being interviewed, etc. And generally, it is said that 4 sentences, 5 sentences should be more than enough to introduce yourself. Right. So once the interview starts, uh, see, there will be different types of questions. There will be different types of situations, and interview is also a kind of mind game, and it is also definitely a matter of luck. So how you are interviewed is also something that depends on you. So there are questions where you can always come out as a winner. For example, certain questions like hobbies. Now, hobby is one question which is relatively asked, which is relatively very common in interviews. So make sure that any hobby that you name as your hobby, you really must have that hobby in real life. For example, if you say cricket as a hobby, then hopefully you should be at least state level player, or at least that city level player, and hopefully you will have idea about the size of the pitch, basically the distance between two stumps, how the season ball is made, and what is the size, approved size of the bat, what was the weightage, for example, of the Sachin's bat, why it was different. Small things which are not supposed to be known to ordinary people who simply watch the cricket for fun. Okay, so you must be an enthusiast about it. You must have a lot of details about whatever you show as your hobby. For example, if you say that you are a trained classical singer in Indian classical music, then you should have clear idea about which gharanas do you belong to, or who was the founder of that gharana, and many other technicalities that may come across. Okay, because the people who are going to conduct interview are also very generally very smart, and they have some idea about you, so they will ask the questions where you may be tested. So make sure that you don't bluff. There will always be questions where you don't know the answer. So sometimes what happens, you are not sure. Let's say there is a question that what is the full form of NAV, and you don't have perfect idea, but you feel that you can try and answer. Then you may say, rather than simply saying no, that I don't know, you may propose it to the interviewer that sir, I can try if you allow. I may be wrong also, but I think I have some idea, and that way you can take the chance. If you don't know, generally say you don't know, because you are not supposed to know everything. And don't beat around the bush. Give very specific answer, give very clear answer. For example, what is the difference between advertising and publicity? Then one line answer is that advertisement is a paid form of communication, publicity is a free form of communication. Uh, Giving examples, sharing stories should be avoided. In an interview, you are expected to be to the point. If you are asked to elaborate, then you may add on some example or more elaboration, but otherwise 1 or 2 lines are enough. For example, if they ask you what is the difference between recruitment and selection, then you may say that recruitment is about creating the pool of applicants by giving advertisements in different mass medias like newspapers, and making sure that large number of people apply for the job, large number of qualified people apply for the job, and that is called creating a pool, and creating a pool of applicants, and it is called recruitment. Selection is then how you select some candidates out of that pool. So for that, there are many methods like personal interview, group discussion, psychometric tests, presentations. Nowadays, there are many other methods which are also used. And so, this is the way you must be able to answer the questions. Questions like what is the difference between sales and marketing, what is leadership, uh, what are the four P's of marketing, are very common questions. Although they are not typically asked a lot nowadays, still some interviewers do ask these questions. So to deal with these types of questions, the best idea is you come out with your own frequently asked questions list. Okay, there may be some 50 or 100 odd questions which may be asked to you, and one or two lines answers to such questions will always impress the interviewer. Please understand that people are looking for clarity in your thought. They don't like the people, I mean, they don't like the candidates who beat around the bush and tell a lot of big stories which make no sense. Nobody has time for your stories. So if story is justified in certain situation, that's all right, but generally I have at least not come across many interviewers who like that, fine. So make sure that you remain to the point. One more thing is sometimes certain tricky situations may come up. For example, in one of my interviews, I was offered a glass of beer. uh, that was very tricky. So play safe. When it is tricky, don't accept it. I mean, very politely deny it, thank you very much, etc. Now, for example, a glass of beer is a very tricky situation. I'm sure, I don't know what is the intention, but I'm sure there was some intention to observe my reaction or something. I don't exactly understand what was in the mind of the interviewer, but things like offering you coffee or tea are very common. I would suggest you not to accept tea or coffee, even if you want to, because you are nervous. If the tea spills over your shirt, etc., the situation may get out of hand. So you don't want a scene. You don't want to create any scene in that, and that's why it is very good idea to play safe. Always deny everything humbly, and make sure that you are focused on your task, okay, at hand. So these are some of the things that you may come across during the interview. Uh, there are questions which are now let me go into some more details. The types of questions that may be asked. For example, certain questions are stress questions. So in stress questions, they ask you the question which may not really be easy to answer. These questions may be tricky. These questions may be sometimes even they may be insulting in nature, or they may basically test your comfort zone. I mean, you may be required to show presence of mind, or you may be required to give answers for which you are not 100% prepared. For example, questions like please give me your Facebook password, or it may be about your personal relationships. I don't want to go further into that area, but there are questions which may make you uncomfortable. So in such stress questions, what you answer is not important. How you react to such questions is more important. So presence of mind is very important. Don't get irritated, don't get angry, don't respond to such questions, and don't get confused as well. So these are the traps to see whether you are ready to face unknown scenarios in real life. Second types of questions are called situational questions. In situational questions, generally you are given a hypothetical situation. For example, if in a hotel, if one of your guests has drunk too much and starts singing loudly, and other guests are in the restaurant getting disturbed, or there is a scene being created, how will you react to that? Now, situational questions, as the name is self-explanatory, where a situation is given to you and you are supposed to solve that situation. They may help interviewers gauge your ability to solve the problems. And more than situational questions, the more difficult questions are called behavioral questions. In behavioral questions, generally they ask you about what you did in real life scenario. For example, if you are asked that how did you handle uh, when a particular guest got drunk too much and started making a scene or making certain noises, or you may be asked to basically prove that how you had one idea which was very difficult to convince to the boss, but you convinced it to him and others, and how you did it. For that, what letters did you write, or what presentations did you make, or what other steps did you take. So the difference between situational questions and behavioral questions is that in situational questions, the situation that you are generally given is hypothetical, imaginary, while in case of behavioral questions, the focus is on what you actually did. And please understand, it is easy to lie in the situational questions because this question itself is hypothetical, but it's very difficult to lie or continuously lie in behavioral questions, because the interviewer will always ask you some counter question. If you say that I tried to convince my boss by making a presentation, then the interviewer will ask you what was the content of that presentation, what evidence did you use, what was the result of that, were others also convinced apart from the boss. So somewhere if you have started lying, you will have to lie a lot and they will catch you. And behavioral questions are in fact considered to be very valid methods of scrutinizing the candidature of a person and selecting or rejecting the candidate. Okay, so uh, please be mentally ready for these types of questions which you may not be able to prepare in advance. So once the interview is over, and once they tell you that you may go, please make sure that you thank them. If possible, shake hand. If shaking hand is something that is not proper according to you, use your own discretion there. At least thank them, warmly tell them thank you very much for the time, or thank you very much. Okay, and it should be, as we say in typical English, it should come from the bottom of your heart, and you should wear a smile at that point of time, not a plastic smile, but a natural smile is expected. Fine. And then leave the premises very quietly. Make sure that the door that you open, it doesn't make noise, or you don't basically uh, do any nonsense there. For example, you lose your balance or something like that should not happen. Sometimes it may happen in the crux of that moment when you are very excited or very confused or whatever. Fine. So once the interview is over, uh, claim your once again make sure that you are back to your senses and leave the premises, the room of the interview, very quietly. After going outside, the other candidates may ask you that what questions were asked. I would suggest you not to go into those details much, because CCTV cameras are around, and generally it is a good idea to leave the premises without really getting into a lot of interaction with other candidates who may be your friends, etc. This is my opinion, although there are no standards way to look at that. Okay, one more thing that we have observed when it comes to interviews is that many companies make people wait before starting the interviews. For example, they may call you at 10 a.m. and they will start the interviews at 3 p.m. So for 5 hours, they may simply observe you what you are doing in the waiting room or the conference hall where you are supposed to be sitting and waiting. So spend that time very productively. Carry 2-3 newspapers or good books with yourself, or make sure your mobile is charged and you can read a book in that. Don't make scene, or don't show unnecessary attitude there that when will the interview start, or my time is very critical. They are looking for those behavioral traits which are not appropriate for professionals, and generally this will test your patience. So make sure that you pass this time very productively, maintain the posture, maintain the calmness, and overall don't lose your path, don't lose your what we can say temperaments, etc. Fine. So these are some of the things that may happen during the interview. And the last thing that I would want to say, that once the interview is over, go back home and write a thank you letter. If you have the contact details of the company, of the HR, and write a thank you letter for simply taking your interview, conducting your interview. Don't ask questions like what will be salary or anything like that in that email. Simply thank the company for the trust it has shown to in you, or at least the time that they invested in conducting your interview. And generally you should write that in 24 hours after the interview is over. Right? So these are some of my thoughts on how to basically crack the interview. And once again I will say that this was very introductory in nature. There are many types of interviews, there are many technicalities associated with the interviews, grooming and all those things. uh, I will definitely try my best to do separate videos on them, more professional videos on them, and I'm sure the audiences will be able to take the maximum out of that. I hope to you like this video. Thank you very much. Good night. Namaste.